Hello and welcome back. This is Marlena Marie. If you are joining this video, you will notice that it's a black screen. That's because I originally recorded one video and intended it to be one, but it ended up as an hour and I decided to cut it. So, Void friends and Void folk, without further ado, here is the second half of the design video. We are looking at interior design.
All right, well, we're back. So, um, so now after talking about that, let's talk about interior. Now, when I was looking at the interior of a book, there's actually a couple of softwares that I don't know. You probably do need to know if you're going into publishing your own book. They are called Atticus and they are called Vellum. Now, Atticus is first off, Atticus is like a different. They're kind of the same thing. They both function in a same way. Vellum is only available on Mac. I'm pretty sure Atticus is available on both Mac and PC. So this is kind of important to know. Atticus, I don't believe, has as many capabilities or as Vellum. I don't really know because I didn't use them.
I actually did a lot of research on the two of them before, I think 2 years ago now. And I ultimately decided that I wasn't going to use them because this book is way too complicated, and I get into that a little bit more in this video. But Atticus has more capabilities than Vellum. Vellum only has, I think, 26 fonts and 26 different options for things. It's a lot more streamlined. It's only for Mac, whereas Atticus, you can use it on Windows, Linux, Google Chromebook, I think, Mac, and it is significantly larger in terms of the font catalog. Atticus, I also think is a little bit harder, but I don't know. I know Vellum's really easy. I also think that you can edit in Atticus, but again, I never used the software, so you probably want to go and get that information from someone else, or I might actually look at them in the future. But for right now, what I know is very limited.
The two of them, though, do basically allow you to import your document into them, and they basically take it, they take all the key phrases, and they transpose it into a actual designed novel. Chapter headers, all this other stuff. You can pick your fonts, you can pick your different things. I think Vellum has more font, or no, I think Atticus has more font options. But then, you just press a couple other buttons, it automatically exports it into whatever file type you want and creates it into whatever style you want. It's very simple sauce system from what I understand. I've never used it, so I cannot vouch for it. I do recommend that you go and look at different videos. I might be completely wrong. Atticus might be significantly more superior to Vellum. I just know that Vellum, I'm pretty sure, is only Mac available, and I've heard a lot of really good things about Vellum and some things about Atticus. I think Atticus also might be the open source version of Vellum. I'm not sure. I have to double check. I did all this research like literally 2 years ago. And I didn't end up using any of it, so it kind of went out of my brain because I couldn't use them. I couldn't use either of these really cool softwares that basically format your book for you with like a single push of a button. I couldn't do it because it wasn't how my book was set up. And now we get into this part about this book. And I'm going to talk about preface at another date where I go into a lot more about the book itself. This video is not that video, but the design of this book, yeah, there are pages where there should be a lot of white space. I needed fonts to be large and tiny. I needed it to look like it was dancing on the page. And it's really funny is that before I got the edits, those weren't even like plans. It was just that the way that the pages were set up was supposed to be like quote title quote book begins was originally how it was set up. And in Vellum, you can't do the two from what I understood. I might have been able to like jerry rig it if I got the software. I might have been able to do it in Atticus, actually. Probably could have. But I decided that since there wasn't an easy explanation on the videos that I was watching, or like it looked like it was going to be easy enough to do it, I was just going to have to do it myself. So I used InDesign. And I credit
Mandy Lynn is the one that I want to credit here, but what I said made like no sense, so we're gonna go again. Mandy Lynn I watched a ton of her YouTube videos and I got her InDesign course from her website. That is where I learned how to pretty much do everything. She gives you templates, she walks you through with a series of videos of why things are done and how they're done and what to do. And it's really simple. It was really easy to follow and it was not that long. Obviously, it was very simplified down, but it was still in depth for a simplified version.
I learned how to use InDesign from her videos in like 2 hours flat. So I have training on Premiere, Avid, and Final Cut Pro, like formal training on all three of them. I have formal training on Audition. I have formal training in Photoshop and Lightroom. I have formal training on so many parts of the Creative Cloud, and informal training. Like I learned a lot of other stuff like through like hit or miss. Like I learned how to use After Effects because through YouTube tutorials and because I wanted my final project for my senior year of college to have an explosion in it. And I don't have the budget for pyrotechnics, so I learned how to basically do weird stuff in After Effects to make some cool things happen. Was it good? No. Did I learn? Yeah. I won't say I'm like the best person at any of it, but I do learn softwares very quickly. And since I already kind of knew Photoshop, since I did know Photoshop and Lightroom and Premiere and After Effects and Audition, I said to myself, how hard is it really going to be to learn InDesign? And I think another thing is that I always knew it wasn't necessarily going to be difficult for me, but I also work as an editor at a magazine, and we use InDesign. My designer uses InDesign to set up all the magazine pages, and then I edit all of them, like as a double check after I've done all my other stuff, right? But like, I'm already using InDesign for work. I know how to like toggle between the switches and how to do different things. I don't know how to set up parent pages. I don't know how to set up the fonts, but I do know the basics, right? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch these tutorials and I'm gonna learn how to do it, and I did it, and then I formatted my own book. I actually had some difficulty with this because you want to have like a really good document that is free of like issues, so that when you upload it into InDesign, it just automatically uploads in places. Now, I tried that, and I forgot how crazy I was, and I forgot that I had text that went across the entire like page. So when I like added it in and then selected all, and then I like dragged it through the entire thing, halfway through the second chapter, everything disappeared. It all disappeared. And I couldn't figure out why. I had no idea why. It didn't actually occur to me why until I was actually going through, and then I realized that it was because it was the entire page. And so then I had to import all of it by hand. Copy and paste in by hand. And now, mind you, is that the way you're supposed to do it? No. You're supposed to be able to just like press a button and drag and drop and import it in. It's not supposed to be this difficult. But what it ended up making me do was that because I had to do it all by hand, and I basically copied and pasted and went by hand, I knew that there was possibility that I missed places, that I missed content. So I had to go through the entire book before I gave the page count to my designer, and I edited every single line to double check that everything was in there correctly. And I still need to do it one last time as a triple check, but I'm pretty sure my page count is fine because it's not really going to go up or down based off of that because of the way that spacing is in this book. And I had to check everything to make sure that everything was in properly. I did actually miss a section, which is surprising. Like I missed an actual good 500 words, if not more. But I put it back in and I added it back in, and I had to have my PDF here, my laptop here, and going through. But what did I learn in this process? I learned that I can use InDesign. I also learned a lot of information on how a page looks. Now, if I had thrown it into Atticus or Vellum, I could have picked a font size, but it would have picked a standard font size for me, right? When I did this, I actually had to look at it, and I had to go, am I going with a 10 or am I going with a 9 for font? What does a 10 say versus what does a 9 say? And I think I thought probably could have still done this too with Vellum, but because a lot of the system does it for yourself, I don't think I would have had the same experience where I actually have a lot of control in InDesign. I could see how the different pages were looking and how different things were going on the page. And for me, in this book, that everything is about silence, which again, we will get into the book at one time. I needed to know exactly how the words were on the page and why I picked the things that I did. I had to do basically everything for the design on the inside. And I went by line, double checking. I need to triple check that all the words are in there, and I will be doing that in the next edit. Basically, that's happening next week. And I got rid of orphans. I got rid of widows, mostly. I mostly got rid of widows and orphans. I left a couple in there on purpose. And I think we're going to talk about the interior design real quick, actually. I won't talk about why specific things were chosen, I guess, in too much detail, because it goes into what the book is about, right? But when I was doing the design for this book, I thought to myself, okay, cool. So I need to have a book that references the themes that I'm doing. So like the cover does that, right? So the interior.
Okay, so I'm going to put this out here. Spoilers are incoming. If you don't want to see what this book is going to look like on the inside, leave now. I am going to try to blur it out and not have it completely seen, but to make my point of what I'm talking about here, I do kind of have to show you at least a little.
And I had to make a choice because I after the edits came in, I kind of made a decision I said to myself, yeah, so no one's going to read this book anyway, so why don't I just do whatever the heck I want? Which basically means say screw it to formatting conventions and do it the way that I want to do it. The way that my master's program basically be like, oh yeah, that's great, that's amazing, that's the best thing ever. So I was like, yeah, we're going to do it the way I would do it for my master's program, which means words on both sides of the pages, which means words that are jumbled up and like connected. There's no space between them. Using punctuation in a very different way. And widows and orphans come into that play, right? So when doing this, I have left aligned, and right aligned text. Two different things. I have text in brackets and I have text in parentheses. I have text that's in different fonts. I have two different fonts that are actually operating through the entire thing of different sizes. I have the two fonts, by the way, are EB Garamond, which is an open source font, and Courier, which is also open source. Both of them, and in case anyone was wondering, when you're making font decisions for your book, you need to make sure that they are commercial, like you can use them for commercial, or open source or free. Right? So I had to set up the fonts and InDesign, get it all going. And I actually ended up using these two because I needed a font that kind of screamed text messages, right? So I wanted to have something that was like a sans serif, like a Calibri or like whatever, right? But then I ended up going with Garamond for my mainline text. And that already kind of feels very like standard for the current era, right? Because a lot of people use Garamond for their like text instead of Times New Roman. It's easier on the eyes. And I was like, okay, well, I need something that's gonna fit it. And I actually had a text that like really worked. I really liked it when I looked at it. I was like, this is really nice for texting language and like news reports and stuff like that. And then I hated it when I actually put it next to Garamond. And I was like, I need something else. And so then I went with Courier, which in case anyone doesn't know, Courier was a font developed by IBM that they basically used on all of their computers and their typewriters when IBM was first going out. They don't have a license on it. New Courier, they do. Original Courier, they don't. Because they wanted it on everything. So they didn't have the patent on it because they wanted everyone to use it. It was the industry standard for a very long time. And so I was like, okay, well, like Courier looks old. Courier looks so old. Courier looks like typewriter font. And I said to myself, a book that takes place in the future in a solar punk world that has their text messaging language, like their text messages and like their news fonts having like this super old style like text in the book. And then like the whole book is also about like the future, but also like the really looking and harping on what happened in the past. Oh, I can go on for like a really long time about why I picked these two fonts and why I think that Courier is actually the best font choice that I could have made, and it was an accident kind of. Anyway, I had to set them up. I had to set up the right like margins. I had to set up like everything properly. It was a whole thing. And I had to go through line by line, making sure that everything was on the correct line that it's supposed to be and everything's in the correct place that it's supposed to be, and making sure that if I have an orphan or a widow, why? And you'll notice as you read through the book, if you do read through the book, that you're going to find it that it's not very often. There will be times where there is a line that only has two words. There will also be a time where you'll find like that there is space, and it's made to give the page space. Everything that I did for what I decided to do with formatting was to give this page space. So if a word looked better on its own line, I ended up usually adding it to give the page space, or I moved it up to the next one with changing of the spacing between like the letters. I just really wanted the pages to look pretty. And I kind of have to explain a little bit about preface, because the book is about dance. It's about arts, but it's about dance. And in the book, one of the notes that I got from my editing was that she wanted to see more of the dance on the page, like see it written down, like described. And I said, I'm not doing that. And I'll get into a little bit more about that later on, and a little bit more about that explanation. So I thought to myself, okay, so how do I show the reader dance when I don't want to describe the dancing? Because the dancing being described isn't the point. And I said, make the text dance. And I mean that completely serious. I was like, I'm going to make the text dance. So I was like, so if I make the text dance, that means that this goes across the page and has all these things. And that's why I made all those other decisions about the alignment and the margins and blah, 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 blah. And then when I was editing it and InDesign, and I had to go by page, changing the widows and changing the orphans and deciding, is this orphan going to stay? Is this widow going to stay? We will talk about my favorite choice one day. I think when the book actually comes out, that I made. And I looked at that choice and I said, that is so iconic and that is so coincidental that I didn't expect it. And it's for silence. When you see it, you'll understand the paragraph, and then tops the next page for silence. And anyone that reads the book will understand what I mean when you get there. That was it was a lucky accident that that's just the way that the page is laid out when I decided to go with the size 9 font, because it looked better from a size wise. And so I have this really cool book that I've now went through every single page and made sure. And something else that I decided, other than making sure that the tempo looked right and that widows and orphans and the white space on the page gave you thing, I did another thing where I kind of broke up paragraphs and I broke up sentences and I broke up phrases so that most, not all, of the pages begin and end with a sentence. So you're not reading a page and then the paragraph continues on to the next page. I'm not going to say that there aren't some like that. I couldn't do it for everything, but for a good majority of the book, it begins on a sentence and it ends on a sentence. And I did that because it creates a tempo, because it's just like dance. And now, am I going to say that that's the best decision? Probably not. Or am I going to say it's going to annoy a lot of readers? Probably, yeah, but I don't really care because I'm doing this at this point, like I said, because I can. And I only was able to do that because of InDesign. Do I think I will do that again for a lot of my other books? No. Because they're not going to have the same level of, well, I won't say they won't have the same level of care, but there's a specific reason that I'm doing it, and it's because of tempo, and it's because of dance, and it's because of white space, and it's because of silence. And I keep starting to talk about the book, and I have to keep pulling myself back. Anyway, design was really cool, and I really hope that, if you have questions, feel free to ask me. Why did I choose a size 9 versus a size 10? Page count. Why did I decide that I wanted to have the specific margins that I did? Because it's easier to read. Why did I decide that I wanted to have the lines ending here and the lines ending? Everything that I did was just because I knew it was going to be difficult and I wanted to make it as easy as possible. And you really can do that when you have the space in InDesign. So enjoy, I guess, the videos that I probably have been showing you throughout the entire thing or right near here at the end. And otherwise, thank you for joining me. We have 2 videos left. This has been Marlena Marie.